AI is rapidly shifting how we organize and work. But if we want a human-centered future, we can't just react to technology. We are all agents in shaping change. Let's help technology and talent work better together. Josh, you mentioned to me that David Green published an interesting article where he was predicting the future of our service centers. How is HR going to provide services in the future? What is going to happen to those jobs? I'm just curious, why did you find it interesting? Why did you want to talk about it?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Amanda. So this article is fascinating, and it talks about AI's implications for data and analytics. And I recommend it to all of you that are listening in. We're going to hone in on specifically the implications are for HR and looking into the future. And when we think about the HR function and we think about call centers in general, so much of that work can be automated, right? And it already is. And one of the things that's really fascinating that is talked about is oftentimes AI can see what the hard questions that are coming from customers are and see who has handled those well in the past and actually route those calls to those individuals. And that's an example of AI as a manager routing calls. Now, when we think about support centers for, we call it level one, level two, level three call center support for HR, typically these organizations will either be, let's just say in the US in this context, onshore or offshore. And the idea is to get effective and efficient customer service happening in a really timely manner. And so sometimes that might be following the sun. So we might be sleeping the majority of the population here in the US, but someone can answer the phone in India or in Australia. And so it's really about speed of service. Now with AI, I think what we're seeing is that a lot of these questions, because of all of the data that is out there, we can see patterns and recognition, and AI will be able to answer those questions. So in summary, I think this is one of those areas where AI will continue to grab market share and be able to do this really well. So there's a lot of implications, but based on what I said, what's coming up for you when you think about HR call centers and the influence of AI in this space?
We have a lot of our HR support people answering this type of question about, I don't know, vacation time, when it's actually quite simple to resolve those with the right bot in place. Whereas what we would prefer them to be helping people with is, I don't know, about their promotion path or something else. So we want to turn people from people who talk about kind of onboarding and logistics discussions and paperwork and policy discussions, which are not necessarily bad conversations to have. They're important for people to feel safe and confident in their role. However, those things tend to be very straightforward to resolve and can be resolved just by looking at the documentation. People just don't know where to look. So we can have the AI solve that and instead have our support people think more about, almost mentoring and coaching type discussions, how to prep for conversations with your manager, how to think through challenges that you're having in your role, so that we can keep unlocking them and avoid churn, that sort of thing. That's where the well-trained coaches could add a ton of value, at least more value than they're adding when they're just doing knowledge-based questions.
Yeah, and I think there's this thing that's exciting for the folks that are working in those shared service centers, which is like you get to talk about skill development and promotions and things that are actually exciting and helpful for the individual versus the transactional paperwork based rudimentary stuff that doesn't have much life or energy in it, right?
Right.
I mean, there are things that need to be solved, but that don't need the human touch, right?
Yeah. We can use the time of our support team better. Right now, they're just dealing with the massive stuff that needs to be resolved and trying to get all the quick hits out of the way. But if we were to think about what is their true value, they wouldn't necessarily be focused on those
Yeah,
topics. So that
and
makes
and
sense.
and if you ask people like what kind of work is most fulfilling, you know, I'm sure 9 times out of 10, the individual in the shared service center would say, helping someone figure out their path to promotion or helping someone figure out the skill that they need to develop and where to find that in our learning ecosystem, or helping someone figure out how to plan for their parental leave and like the steps that are needed to take and how to figure out the different support and benefits that we have for them,
Yeah.
and which is better for them, right? And so I think it's a win-win, right? It's great for the organization. It's great for the folks that are in the shared service centers, and it delivers an optimal experience for the employee looking for the help.
Makes sense. If I recall, David Green was implying that if it goes as well as you're suggesting here, that we should see more and more of these call centers being replaced or those budgets being shifted towards AI resources or a mix of AI resources and call centers, um, which makes me think that we'll need a period of actually testing and evaluating whether or not people, first of all, are comfortable dealing with a chatbot. Obviously, we're used to dealing with chat help now as opposed to phone help. So that part is, I think, pretty clear. But are issues actually being resolved in this way? We'll need a period of testing that. And then we'll need to figure out how to get people in the habit of going to this chatbot first before they're routed to people, especially for those people who believe, and maybe rightly believe, that their issue is going to be resolved faster through talking to a human being. So, do you have any experience with um, launching a new tool and getting people comfortable with it? Like, how realistic is it to roll something out and shift people to software from a human resource in your experience?
It's a great question. So, I mean, my experience, and this is interesting from the context of what's in place now and the folks that are doing the work,
Mm,
and how the work could shift potentially to AI. So, typically, what happens in call centers, but also let's keep in mind the context of the future with AI is you look at and you bucket the types of queries or questions that people ask.
mhm.
And they tend to be the same things, and there might be 20 buckets of themed questions, and typically those calls or those questions are routed to people in the current state, right? And so
Yeah,
someone who's fielding these questions understand on a regular basis what's being asked and how to answer it, and they have like a script, right? In the future, a lot of that work could be routed to AI. And so what works in both contexts is looking at the data to see what the queries are, and figuring out how to resolve them with speed and with effectiveness, right? So in this context of how I'm laying it out, you would have call center employees actually working with a design team to figure out the best way to move those queries to be automated, and not have to have the connection to the customer service representative in this context. So that's how I've done it in the past, and that's how it typically is done. But it's about the human centric design, and it's about making sure those folks that are doing the work now are
mhm.
engaged in the design of the partnership between the talent and the tech. And then typically what will happen is you get to a level of complexity in the customer service or employee experience where it's going to require talent to answer the question because there's multiple variables that the tech might not be able to sift through. So that's when the design and the build, if it's talent and tech together, when you get to that complexity, the talent actually can resolve it pretty quickly, and the experience for the individual that has gone through the process is improved because it's fast. And then once there's a roadblock where the AI or the tech can't answer the question, it's handed over to the talent and the issue is resolved.
Yeah. Yeah, one thing that's occurring to me is when people say, "Oh, these jobs are going to be replaced," what they actually mean is these tasks in the
Mm,
job description are going to be replaced. It doesn't necessarily mean if 30% of your tasks are replaced, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other 70% aren't needed. You might say, okay, there's now a fewer number of call center staff needed. Obviously, most of the time, these are outsourcing contracts, so not exactly the same as changing your number of employees, but we're talking about, let's say, the workforce as a whole. Do we need fewer call center staff? What also occurs to me is that usually the constraint that companies are dealing with is actually budget, not necessarily the amount of support that they want to offer. So,
mm,
what this might mean is that, let's say we play out the theory that the job descriptions change. What this might mean is that we shift same budget and focus it on other topics where we weren't able to provide support before because we simply didn't have the budget. So now we have 5 million before and 5 million after. We're increasing the amount of support that we can provide for that same amount of money because AI is taking on some and humans are taking on other parts. And potentially we have the same number of people. And it opens the door to either more complex questions, more personalized questions being resolved by our support function, or possibly taking on a more hands-on role where intervention is required. So call center folks, I know you were mentioning to me in an earlier conversation about different levels of support they can offer. Let's say we can increase the level of support by offering more hand holding, so we're actually doing tasks with you or for you, helping you think through and resolve issues in real time where you might be rushed off the phone under previous metric systems. Does that resonate with you? Does that seem like a realistic course if we were to adopt an AI tool to say cut off 30-40% of the easy topics? What do you think?
I think that's right, and it allows us to really connect with the customer and the employee and help them in the time of need. And so again, you move away from I'm frustrated because I've been waiting for a long time to get help
Hmm.
to I've gotten help from tech, and now it's time for me to connect with someone to get to the next level of resolution. So it's actually more efficient and
Hmm.
more satisfying for individuals. So by the time that you and I get the voice connect and the human connect, um, I'm actually excited to have the conversation because the baseline challenges have been sorted and organized, and now we're ready for the next piece of the resolution. So in that way, it's a better experience for the employer, the customer, and then for me as the supporter, I feel better because I can help you and in a way that is meaningful and also efficient. And I think the other thing that I'll say about this is for the folks that are in these roles, which are really important. I just want to stress that like people that are in these customer service roles are the lifeblood of any company. And
Hmm.
when you go to talk to these folks and these people around companies, they understand what's working, they understand what's not working. They can really help you with your product, with reimagining your organization. And in this context, we're asking and we're recommending that these folks start to think about being creators, designers, and like, how can you improve this process for yourself to make it more engaging for you and more satisfying for the folks that you get to serve. So it's an exciting kind of opportunity to shift from a repeatable response or question and answer to let's just redesign the whole process and figure out the best way for these individuals, yourself included, to do the work and for the tech to also help.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you look at it in a more pessimistic way, you'd say, oh, these um, call center people, employee experience support staff are going to be training or providing feedback on the bot so that they can ultimately be let go. And in the condition where the company is really focused on driving budget down, there is a possibility that technology is going to be used that way. But most of the time, they have a budget and they want to maximize what they're doing for that budget. That's the usual approach. So what I would expect more of is trying to engage these folks because turnover tends to be quite high in that role. Trying to engage these folks in helping improve the overall design of employee experience, at least the parts that they touch, and using automation, using artificial intelligence to enhance the overall employee journey through support and possibly give them a little bit more freedom to take action and provide advice and guidance where they might be in the sort of usual state, under a lot of constraints over how to handle a particular issue. So one would hope that if it was implemented correctly and the goal was actually driving value for the company and for employees, that this would not be about just driving down costs, but actually improving the overall quality of what we deliver. But I suppose that's to be seen when we actually test rolling out some of these systems um, in organizations over the next couple of years. Anything
Absolutely.
else? Yeah.
Yeah, I just close with a couple of things. One, if I'm working in a shared service center or a call center, I think it's important to, and many of these folks already are doing this, but it's important to be curious, to learn, to educate yourself on what's happening and what's kind of next in terms of AI evolution and,
Hmm.
and, and the role that you can play in partnership. Right. And so there's something for folks that are working in these environments that I think is really important, which is just, reading, understanding, learning, and thinking about how you will work with technology to optimize the customer employee experience and also make yourself continue to be relevant and strong and an advisor in this space in the human centered design context. If I am an HR leader or a head of talent and I have call centers under my responsibility, I would begin to start getting deeper into the operations and learning more about what's happening right now, and the opportunities that could be in front of us. So it's education as well, but it's also like getting more engaged now in what's going on in that space and starting to bring together cross-functional groups of people to think about how AI will influence the future strategy of the organization.
Yeah, absolutely. We want talent support people to feel that they have some agency in improving how employees feel about their work and taking action to help them, and that they have some ownership over the future of that employee experience. So we can elevate that function from a pure sort of answer questions in the knowledge base role to actually assisting or being a resource or a partner with talent to help them perform in their work and resolve issues that are getting in their way. That's quite exciting, actually.
Yeah, it is. And for those of you that are listening that are in this space, we'd love to hear from you. We'll continue to have these talks that we'll publish, but really the magic is like what's happening for you in the day to day, and what are you seeing and hearing? What are you thinking and feeling? And this is space for us to collaborate and discuss what's happening. So we look forward to hearing from you and look forward to continuing to share our thoughts and views.